Good afternoon, respected HOD sir, respected consultants, seniors, and my dear colleagues. I'm Dr. Parvati S, JR1, Department of Transfusion Medicine, MGM Indore. I'm going to present a journal on the topic Emerging Threats to Blood Bank Safety. My moderator for today's journal is Dr. Sachin Sharma sir, Associate Professor, Department of Transfusion Medicine, MGM Indore. So this article I have taken from Transfusion Medicine Reviews. This Transfusion Medicine Reviews provides an international forum in English for the publication of scholarly work devoted to various subdisciplines of transfusion medicine. The chief editor for this journal is Professor Dr. Sunny Desick, MD, Department of Pathology and Internal Medicine, Marshall's General Hospital, Boston, USA. The site score for this is 11.4 and the impact factor is 4.5. The official online website partner for this journal is Science Direct. This is published by Elsevier. Currently, the volume running is volume 38 and it was published on Jan 2024. Coming to my journal, this is the journal which I'm going to present, Emerging Infectious Diseases and Blood Safety, Modeling the Transfusion Transmission Risk. This study was done by Professor Dr. Philip Kelly, Professor Manoj, Alan, Zoe, Cleve, and Erica. It is coming under the volume 31, issue 3, pages 154 to 164. It is available online from May 15, 2017. All authors declare conflicts of interest as none, and this was funded by the Australian government. So these are the things which we are going to see today. We are going to define emerging infectious diseases, the criteria for emerging infectious diseases, and the outbreak in worldwide and in India, and why we are expecting more EAD outbreaks now, and what are the differences between the normal transfusion relevant viruses and EAD, and we are going to review the journal. First, definition of emerging infectious diseases. The emerging infectious diseases are those whose incidence in humans has increased within the past 2 decades or threatens to increase in the near future. The causative agents of EID include new or previously undetected agents, agents that are re-emerging following a period of low incidence, or those for which a disease association has not been previously recognized. This can also include zoonotic infections. So, knowing EID, we should also know about re-emerging infectious diseases. These are the old diseases with a new problem. A re-emerging infectious disease is one which was previously controlled but once again has risen to be a significant health problem. The examples for re-emerging infectious diseases are plague, which was re-emerging in Himachal Pradesh in 2002, leptospirosis in 2002 in Maharashtra, anthrax in 2003 in Orissa, and scrub typhus in 2004 in Sikkim. So, what are the criteria for emerging infectious diseases? It should be able to establish an infection in humans and spread within the population. The infection includes an asymptomatic blood phase, and it should be able to survive during blood processing and storage, and it should be transmissible by IV route and associated with a clinically apparent disease in at least a proportion of recipients. So, these are the worldwide outbreaks of emerging infectious diseases. These include West Nile virus in China between 2002-2003, SARS-CoV in China in 2019, avian influenza H5N1 in La Reunion Island in 2005-2007, chikungunya in West Pacific region in 2012, and all these are a few emerging infectious diseases. So, about the EID in India, it mostly involves viruses. Those are Nipah virus outbreak in West Bengal in 2001 and 7, hantavirus outbreak in South India in 2005 and 6, human enterovirus 71 outbreak in Kerala in 2003, Chandipura virus outbreak in Maharashtra in 2003, and Crimean Congo outbreak in Gujarat in 2011. So, as we know, now we are knowing about the EID and what are the different EIDs, we need to know why we are expecting more EID outbreaks at this present scenario. It can be due to increased pathogen mutation, which is obviously due to increased transmission efficiency of the pathogens and increased pathogenicity. Globalization due to international travel and commerce, war and conflict due to large-scale human movement, breakdown of public health infrastructures, human population growth due to increased encroachment onto animal habitats, intensive farming and environmental changes, climatic changes due to geographical spread of vectors and pathogens, and increased demand for meat and animal products leads to increased incidence of zoonotic infections. We need to know the difference between the major transfusion relevant viruses and emerging infectious diseases. Both are different terms, and the differences are major transfusion relevant viruses are well characterized, whereas EIDs are less well characterized because they are newly identified or have been known for some time, but they are not considered a research priority. Also, transfusion transmissible viruses are easy to predict, whereas EIDs are difficult to predict. This TTIs, the risk assessments have a high degree of certainty, whereas EID risk assessment have a high degree of uncertainty. This mostly the transmission viruses are transmitted human to human and without any vectors, whereas EID are mostly vector borne. But they may also be transmitted human to human, but the major part is they are vector borne. And here TTIs are mostly worldwide distribution, and the EIDs are mostly confined to a particular geographical area. And here for TTI, we have universal screening, but for EIDs, it is not possible to do donor screening for all the EIDs. So, how we are going to model the risk for both TTI and EID viruses? For major transfusion relevant viruses, we can easily get the incidence and window period of those agents. So, from that, we can calculate the TT risk, the incidence of infection in donor population, which we already know due to the universal donor screening, and the infectious window period also we know, which is nothing but the period during which an acutely infected donor may be infectious but not detectable by the screening assay. So with these two, we can able to estimate the TT risk. But EID, we do not know the incidence. Also, we do not know the window period for an EID. So it is quite difficult for establishing a TT risk. So what we are going to do is, we are going to have some other different methods for estimating the EID risk. This is about the journal. In this journal, they have made two models for estimating the transmission transmissible risk in EIDs. Those two methods are biggest of Peterson model, BP model, and the European upfront risk assessment tool, UFRAT model. We are going to see in detail about these two models. First is the biggest of Peterson model. It was first published model for estimating the TT risk for EID agent, and this was published in response to West Nile virus outbreaks in the US, first reported in Queens, New York City in 1999. Here they retrospectively estimated the transfusion transmissible risk of West Nile virus during the outbreak in Queens and other regions in US. The implementation of donor screening for West Nile virus was done in 2003 following this model. So, what methodology they are going to follow in this BP model, we should know. It is a hybrid approach, which means it is going to combine both a statistical resampling method and a formula methodology. First, for statistical resampling, what are the requirements? These three are the necessary requirements, which is the number of reported cases of West Nile virus neurological disease, which is nothing but meningoencephalitis, for the period of observation, and the date of symptom onset for each reported case. This is very important for this statistical resampling, the date of symptom onset for each reported case, and the population of the outbreak area. The other additional requirements for this are time course of West Nile virus infection, ratio of West Nile virus neurological disease cases to total number of West Nile virus infections, and ratio of asymptomatic to symptomatic infections. So, in this resampling method, what they did was, based on the symptoms of the onset dates of West Nile neurological disease cases, they simulated the number of symptomatic viremic cases. We can easily get that if we know the date of onset, we can get the number of symptomatic cases also. And based on the general population, they calculated the total of West Nile virus infection to the reported West Nile virus neurological disease. Both these things they calculated, and they estimated a risk curve for both of these, which represented the estimated proportion of asymptomatic cases in population, which was equated to TT risk of West Nile virus. So, this is about the resampling method. moving on to the formula methodology of biggest of Peterson model, they gave a formula which is average risk is equal to D of asymptomatic disease by T into R into IP, which means here D of asymptomatic is the mean duration of asymptomatic viremia, T is the period of observation, R is the ratio of total infections to the reported cases, and IP is the population incidence of reported cases. This average risk, we can also make this to another formula like the period of observation into collecting viremic donation from each asymptomatically infected donor into incidence of the infection. So this is the formula method, and that was the resampling method. So where this was used, where this biggest of Peterson model was used, it was being used in chikungunya virus outbreak in La Reunion Island in 2005 and 7, in dengue virus outbreak in Australia, again chikungunya virus outbreak in Italy, Hepe virus in Latvia, and Ross River virus in Australia. In most of the things, as we can able to see, they use the formula method instead of the resampling method. Because in formula, we are just going to put the data entries which we already have, and we can move on to a final conclusion. So, as the biggest of Peterson model is over, now moving on to the second method, which is the UFRAT model. This is European Upfront Risk Assessment Tool, and it is a web-based interface, and here a series of risks is calculated. It is a four-step process from blood donation till the recipient and who's receiving the blood. Here, the risk of donor being infectious at the time of donation is calculated. Following this, we are going to calculate how many number of donations he has given. Following this, the number of infected donations released for processing into blood components, and the risk of recipients becoming infected. All these four are calculated in UFRAT model. From a risk of donor being infectious till we are going to then we are going to see the number of donations he is giving. Then we are going to see the number of blood components made out of it, and the recipient who is getting infected by receiving those components. So this UFRAT model was again used in all these cases in chikungunya virus, in dengue virus, in Coxiella burnetii, and Ross River viruses. So how they are coming to this donor incidence? From the population incidence, we are coming to the donor incidence. How we are coming to that is the EID incidence in the eligible donor population is estimated based on the incidence in the general population. We are going to estimate everything from the general population, and we are going to assume it to be the donor population. So here they have given 4 points to justify this. The diagnosis and reporting of symptomatic infections in the general population represents all symptomatic cases. Published historical data estimating the ratio of asymptomatic to symptomatic infections is the incidence. Individuals with symptomatic infections would either not present to donate or would be excluded from donating, and blood donors have the same risk of infections as the general population. These are some of the assumptions common to both the UFRAT and BP model, and these are the limitations of these models. So here the limitations are mostly the input parameters we are getting are not well defined every time. Also for the BP model, we need a particular date where the symptom onset has been taken, and from that only we are going to derive the entire BP model. So which is the limitation of the BP model. So we are going to see if it is okay to compare both the BP models and UFRAT models. Both the BP and UFRAT models estimate the risk of asymptomatic infection in donors. However, we know that UFRAT models also incorporate additional risk components like risk of collecting an infectious donation till a recipient related risk. Another difference between BP and UFRAT model is related to the distribution of input parameters, which may potentially contribute to the output differences. Because the inputs are not same in both the models, obviously the output will be different. So even when we are using the same data set, there might be some difference between the risk estimate between the two models. So we can give formula for UFRAT model as well, because UFRAT model doesn't have any formula, but they have derived a formula for the UFRAT model as well, which is nothing but prevalence of infectious disease, PD, is equal to number of reported infection in the population, IP, divided by N into T, size of population into the period of observation into 1 minus rho. Rho is the period of undetected infections into D. D is the period of infectiousness. This is one formula for UFRAT which they have used, and these are other two formulas for UFRAT where rho is the proportion of asymptomatic infections. So 1 minus rho would be proportion of symptomatic donors, and 1 by 1 minus rho would be ratio of total infections by symptomatic infections, and this IP by N would be incidence of symptomatic cases, and this D by 2 would be proportion of observation period that each donor is infectious. So this is the formula. This is the second formula where we put the second formula where the reporting system is 100% effective. And the another formula for UFRAT model is it is based on the assumption that if the infection does not include a chronic phase and that donor testing has not been implemented, this prevalence can be is equal to prevalence of infectious diseases into rho. So now moving on to comparison. First we have made that can we compare both the models. Now we are going to actually compare both the models. There are actually three studies which have compared. The first two studies, the risk estimates were very similar. First two studies were done done on 2007 on chikungunya virus outbreak in Italy and Q fever outbreak in Netherlands in 2007 and 9. Both these studies had the very similar risk estimate. And the third study, it got a different risk estimate. This study was in Rose River virus infection in Australia between June 2013 to May 2014. So, in this, what was the difference is UFRAT estimated risk of asymptomatic infection in donors was 1 in 33,481 as compared to BP model, which was 1 in 58,657. This difference is due to methodological differences between the two things, but however, the most possible estimate of BP model was within 95% confidence interval for the UFRAT estimate, indicating the risk estimates were not significantly different. So these two models we have compared and we have known about this. And the final thing is we are going to see about a Zika virus, which is a global public health concern now. It is the latest EID now, and it is a mosquito-borne flavivirus infection. We know that the vector for this is Aedes aegypti mosquito, and it is a non-vector-borne mode. It can also be transmitted by non-vector-borne mode. It was first isolated in 1947 in rhesus monkey. The first human transmission was in Nigeria in 1954. So, why Zika virus represents a potential threat to blood safety? Zika virus has demonstrated an ability to establish infections in human and spread within human population. And about 80% of Zika virus infection do not develop symptoms. But in addition, Zika virus RNA has been detected in asymptomatic blood donors during the outbreak period, and it can cause diseases like microcephaly in newborns and Guillain-Barré syndrome in other populations. And also, there is evidence of Zika virus in transfusion transmissible risk in at least 4 probable TT cases in Brazil. So, what are the recommendations for this? We have to do universal screening of all donations in USA for Zika virus by NAT testing and pathogen reduction methods which promise effective protection from most TTVs. Further research we need to know to understand the Zika virus epidemiology and virology. So, a few words about bacterial contamination since we have been seeing about viruses alone. Microorganisms isolated from contaminated red cells include staph, epidermis, Serratia liquefaciens, Pseudomonas, and Yersinia enterocolytica, and platelet concentrates contaminated with Bacillus species, E. coli, Klebsiella, Staph aureus, Staph epidermidis, Serratia marstans, and Streptococcus species account for 85% of fatal reactions. Also, the risk of septic reactions is greater with platelets than with other red blood cells. Conclusion: EID outbreaks will continue to occur during the course of 21st century and pose an ongoing challenge for those with responsibility for maintaining the safety of blood supply. Emerging infectious threats are becoming more frequent due to various social, environmental, and geographical pressures, including increased human-animal contact, global trade, transportation, and changing climate conditions. Modeling the TT risk of EID agents is an important part of risk assessment to make decisions regarding when the risk mitigation strategies should be implemented and which strategies are the most appropriate. These are my references. Thank you.